What's going on YouTube? It's Teach, back again with another video, and it's the weekend. That means it's time for another 2023 NFL mock draft. Got 3 rounds coming your way over the next 3 days. Today we start with round 1, tomorrow will be round 2, and then Sunday we wrap it all up with round 3. Hey, we're another week closer to the NFL draft, and now, last week we were watching the combine, but obviously I recorded just before that. Now I have all these combine numbers kind of fully taken into form, and because of that, there's a lot of shifting and players moving up and players moving down the board pretty drastically this weekend. So excited to bring you this updated mock. Hopefully you guys enjoy. Hit the like button if you do. Subscribe if you're new, looking for more draft content. And of course, the most important thing you can do is leave your comment down below. Who's your favorite team? Did you like the haul? Who do I have going too high? Who do I have falling too low? I read every comment, so let me hear your thoughts down below. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into the madness. And I want to start, we are going to have a trade at pick number 1. But I've been posting these mocks every week since the beginning of January. And back then I said, Chicago, Carolina, I think that's the trade. If I were to put my, life on the line, that would be what I think happens. Carolina moving up to the 9. And because of the Jalen Carter situation, that's kind of bared out. And we were starting to see a whole lot of mocks with Carolina moving from 9 up to 1. So I wanted to do something a little different, get something fresh on your eyes. What if Houston is willing to offer 12 and then all the additional assets it would take to get to 1? That would put Houston in a situation to have the first 2 picks of the draft. It'd be the second time in NFL history. I think the first was in 1992 with the Indianapolis Colts. So, we're talking about 12, 33, so the Bears recoup the second. They basically gave up for Chase Claypool. It's picking both first, but it would just be the one next year and then a second. But to that point, I'm kind of not mad that it's bundling 2 ones because we're talking about Carolina having to give up, it's bundling the 2 ones for 2024. Because we're talking about Carolina having to give up 3 first rounders to move to 1. So Houston going from 12 to 1, they might have to do the same thing. So in summary, basically, this year's first, pick 33, Cleveland's first at the minimum, and then a second rounder, and then probably another first rounder the year beyond that. So this year, next year, the only years left where Houston has Cleveland's picks. So why not go ahead and take advantage of it? You're basically giving up Cleveland's first rounder this year, next year, giving up your own the year beyond that, and then second rounder this year next. It's fun. And then it sets up this situation where we can now start the draft, and Houston gets the best 2 players in the class, at least the ones that don't have any off-the-field concerns. They get their franchise quarterback in Bryce Young, and then they get to draft the best defensive player again without any off-field concerns, kind of clouding his draft stock right now in Will Anderson. Let's supercharge this rebuild. Let's give D'Amico Ryans everything he needs to get this up off the ground. Let's give him a blue-chip defensive player, and let's give him that face of the franchise, that quarterback position, so we can see what this offense is really all about. Where can they get better? Where are they struggling right now? Where are those strengths to that matter? So I thought this was a really fun idea, and again, it would only be the second time in NFL history that a team had the first and second picks. And if you're, Chicago, you could trade it 2 and get less for it, but then still be able to get Will Anderson at 2. Or you can go for 12 and get more assets. So I thought it was kind of fun. Next week, I'll probably do Carolina moving from 9 to 1 because it's a little bit more realistic. But I thought this was kind of a fun thought experiment. And that takes us then to the Arizona Cardinals. And Tyree Wilson coming off the board. So that means, yes, Wilson ahead of Jalen Carter. Again, we just don't know what to expect with Carter's situation. And Tyree Wilson, Daniel Jeremiah's hearing that some teams have Wilson ahead of Will Anderson, and I don't think he's wrong. I think he's hearing that. I think teams have a board like that. So I'm going to play into that hype. He's 6'6", 280 plus pounds, or right around that, and then 86-inch wingspan. That is insane. He plays really well with strength. He plays and utilizes that arm length at a really high degree, and he will just long arm tackles, and tackles will look like they're helpless because they kind of are. They look like a turtle about to go back onto their shell. So there's a lot to work with. I do think he is a relatively high floor run defender, so you're getting a little bit now while also trying to tap into his upside as a pass rusher, which certainly Arizona could use. That takes us to pick 4, Indianapolis. I'm going to have CJ Stroud be the second quarterback off the board. Next week, I'm going to play with the quarterback order as well in a way that I have not done yet on the channel, and it's kind of hopping on a hype train that we have right now. But this week, let's stick with CJ Stroud. That could very well be Indianapolis's QB1 for all we know. We haven't seen that board. So he has that, Chris Ballard size and, kind of stature that he likes. And that's the same reason I kind of like Will Levis going to the Colts. And I also kind of like Levis's toolsy, traitsy, background and public perception paired up with Shane Steichen versus CJ Stroud, where He's got a solid arm. He's the most accurate passer in this class, can tuck and run when he needs. And as long as the situation's good, he'll be pretty good. Now, granted, we did get to see a little bit of him being a creator in the college football playoffs. So hopefully it's not just him being someone who, if he's in a good offense, he'll be good, a la Jared Goff back when he was with Sean McVay and the Rams, and with Ben Johnson this past year with the Detroit Lions. I'm hoping he can be more than that. If we're going to take him to the top 5, you certainly hope that he is as well if you're a Colts fan. So we're going to go with CJ Stroud, say, hey, that last college game of his career, that's what we're building towards. That's what's going to become the norm when we talk about CJ Stroud. And then we get to Seattle, and this is where I'm going to have Jalen Carter come off the board. Now, again, there's so much clouding this that it's hard to tell really where he's going to go. I still think it's going to be top 10. I don't think he gets past Philadelphia, if I'm honest. So I think here at 5 and then again at 6 with Detroit, you're talking about Seattle, who made the playoffs, Detroit, who just barely missed it, two teams that want to win now, needing a player like Jalen Carter. They both need a guy like that on their defensive line. So 5 or 6 is kind of still where I'm kind of zeroing in on Jalen Carter going. And plus, I think they both have great cultures. Like Pete Carroll has earned so much goodwill from the NFL that I think post-conference presser, yeah, we know Jalen Carter has some of these off-field concerns, but we got to talk to him. We think he's a great guy. We're going to work with him, and we're going to get him back on the right path. And I think the same thing, Dan Campbell could say the same stuff if they took him at 6, and I totally buy in. So I'm kind of leaning into good cultures here, trying to make the best image possible for Jalen Carter, his outlook, as well as the team, whoever takes him in the first round. Thought about quarterback here. Again, maybe we'll talk about that more next week. But anyways, actually, while we're talking quarterback, Geno Smith, that contract kind of almost made me more willing to go quarterback, because from what I understand, the guaranteed money is in the calendar year of this year. So really, this sounds like it's going to be something that maybe is a 1, maybe 2 season contract. So if Anthony Richardson's here at 5, I think that is kind of an interesting play that Seattle could go down. But we'll explore that in future mocks. Next up, Detroit Lions. Going to go Christian Gonzalez. Yeah, I think he's pretty much put a stamp on being CB1. He's got, he may not have the floor that Witherspoon has, like right here, right now, can play a football game, pat him up, and like get him in the league right now. But I don't think he's far off. And then you're talking about 6'2", 40+ inch vertical, sub 440. Great arm length. Just a twitchy athlete who played a lot of off coverage at Oregon, but I think has more than capable with his traits and his size to be a man press corner. So I think you get flexibility both with playing at the line of scrimmage, but also off coverage, man versus zone. I think Christian Gonzalez essentially can do it all. So he certainly deserves to be a guy that goes in the top 10, which is crazy because you go back, I don't know, maybe 3 months. I liked the corner class, but I liked it for depth, not for like the headline names. But I think Christian Gonzalez has become one of those headliners that could sneak in the top 10. Going back to like J.C. Horn, Pat Surtain, how we kind of viewed them 2 years ago. Not really comparing him to like Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley, who were, some people had them in the blue chip category last year and a weaker draft class. So I think the situations are a little different, but I think Gonzalez has warranted a top 10 pick. And whether it's here Detroit, the Raiders the next pick, Atlanta at 8, I think he's live to go somewhere in this range. Anyways, let's move on. And we get to the Las Vegas Raiders. This is where I'm going to have Will Levis come off the board. Like I said, I'm still a big fan of Will Levis. He's my quarterback too. I like the release. I like the arm strength. I like more mobility than Stroud. Now I know the decision-making is not great. But I think a lot of that is being a product of a bad team and just trying to have to win games and put the team on your back. And you compare him and, CJ Stroud. Stroud's coming from a pristine situation with a ton of talent, and then Will Levis is kind of lagging behind down here with, Wan'Dale Robinson gone, doesn't have NFL talent on the outside. The offensive line was pretty putrid. I don't think the play calling or the coaching for that matter. You're like, Mark Stoops is kind of like his dad. He's a defensive-minded coach that wants to run the ball, and really Chris Rodriguez was the only other, guy on that Kentucky offense that I saw and was like, that guy should be playing on Sundays. So, I think that Stroud's coming from up here, Levis is coming from down here, and then eventually they're going to intersect and pass one another once they get into the NFL, and the situations talent-wise around them are going to be more comparable. But anyways, that's not really the root of this video, of course. But Josh McDaniels getting this toolsy, traitsy quarterback, I could see this being the guy that he wants to, take a shot at. With it sounded like Aaron Rodgers is going to go to New York, it sounds like, Vegas could be looking at, maybe we draft Jimmy Garoppolo and have Levis compete with them, or we're just going to take a quarterback at 7, and whoever we get, we throw him out there. So let's move on to the Atlanta Falcons at 8. That's going to be Brian Branch. Still like this pick. Yeah, I know the 40 wasn't great. It was in the 4.5s. But this is one of those guys where I would just check the NGS data. Obviously not something I have at my arsenal, but this is a guy I think plays faster than what that 40 said. Dalvin Cook ran a 4.5. Kyle Hamilton did not know how to run, did not have a track background. So he's like running the 40 and he's like weaving in and out of the lane essentially. Not good for an efficient time, quickest way from point A to point B is a straight line. So, I don't really think the 40 really bears out to what Brian Branch looks like on the field. Sure, he could fall past this, but I still like him as a guy going to Atlanta. Terry Fontenot is talking about how much that nickel corner position means to him. He's a great tackler. You could use him as a blitzer. He's great in coverage, man, or zone. I think this is just kind of such a flexible piece that you could do so much with, and you could build your defense around him. So I'd love to see him end up in Atlanta. He's one of my favorite players in the class. He's just outside that blue chip tier for me. He's a really good football player. Again, the tackling with the coverage ability, and I think he plays quicker than that 4.5. I still think of him as someone who should go in the top 10. Then we get to Carolina, and this is where we're going to have our final quarterback come off the board. I've been saying for months now, I think 4 quarterbacks go in the top 10. I think after Richardson blew up the combine with historically awesome numbers, that just kind of ensured it. Big fan of what Anthony Richardson could become. Now, that being said, he looks like a guy who's only been a 1-year starter and only has a certain amount of reps. He can do it as a passer. I think back to that first pass against Florida State. Man dropped a dime, 60-plus yards down the field, hit the guy in stride. He was hit by a defender, that is. Hit the receiver in stride. Touchdown, what a way to start the game for Florida. He's got that stuff. This is not having to create and teach him how to be a passer. He's already got it. Now we just need it on a more consistent basis. Add a little bit of touch to that deep ball too. You felt like you saw that at the combine, but we all knew he was the best athlete of the group, the quarterback position, but 4.4, 340, 40-plus inch vert. The broad jump was great. And then just on those deep passes, you'd like to see a little bit more touch to it, but dude, he just flicks his wrist and it flies 60 yards. It's insane. It is effortless. Like Christian Gonzalez and how he moves, that's Anthony Richardson chucking a deep ball. So obviously a lot to work with here with Anthony Richardson. And, if I'm Frank Reich and he's the last quarterback on the board, I'm obviously making this decision. But you're trying to kickstart this rebuild. This is a team that could be the team to rule the NFC South, depending on how the quarterback position plays out. So, boom or bust play here with Anthony Richardson. But if it works out, the Panthers might be the best team in that division for a decade plus. Anyways, let's move on now to pick number 10. I'm going to have Lucas Van Ness go to the Philadelphia Eagles. Pretty solid combine. Actually weighed in a little bit lighter than what Iowa had him listed at. But I don't really worry about that when it comes into account for his inside-out versatility. He played on the inside against or at Iowa, and he played fine. Didn't get to see the field a whole lot just because Iowa is we play our older guys, and younger guys are going to wait their turn. So they're just kind of, in their ways, if you will. But, having Van Ness's experience, be able to play on the inside and be a good run defender, I think is a solid place to start. And then, you had a pretty good day at the combine, and you see the pass rush moves. He knows how to turn that, explosive first step off the line into power. Turning speed into power is a key here. And he's got a fair amount of bend. I don't think he's a one-trick pony either. I think he's got more tools in the arsenal, and he's one of the younger guys. As said, Iowa didn't get him on the field because he is one of the younger guys. Redshirt sophomore, if memory serves. So, young guy with inside-out versatility. This is just kind of screaming Eagles. And specifically, the reason I like this fit is his ability to turn that speed into power. That just feels like a perfect replacement for Brandon Graham. So I really like this, and I like it because Philadelphia then can kind of continue with what they already have, just doing with the new face, taking over one of those edge rusher spots. Then we move to the Tennessee Titans. No shocker here. Paris Johnson Jr., my OT1, 6'6", 315, great feet. Looked good at the combine. All the tackles really did look good from top of the board down to the day 2 guys too. Blake Freeland and crew looked pretty good as well. But Paris Johnson Jr. is that Taylor Lewan replacement. Big time upgrade over Dennis Daly. The only frustrating part here, if you're a Titans fan, is this was a hole you created by moving on from Taylor Lewan. And really, it's a hole created because John Robinson and that contract that they gave to Taylor Lewan was just one that they can't have around because it's such a huge cap hit for a guy that's getting up there in age and then just can't stay healthy either. So just unfortunate how it played out because I'd love to, make this Quentin Johnston, a speed wide receiver. I'd love to see it be, edge. They're cutting, Bud Dupree. Rashad Weaver could certainly be that guy too. But I'd rather them use this on something that wasn't a kind of self-created hole on the roster that you kind of had to make because of the Taylor Lewan cut. But nonetheless, big time upgrade. And this is something you're going to need for Ryan Tannehill, and it's going to make Derrick Henry happy. So it makes a lot of sense from that standpoint. Then we get the Chicago Bears moving all the way back from 1 to 12. And I thought about either Myles Murphy, but ultimately I'm going to go with Nolan Smith here. Big time winner from Indianapolis, 4.39 40, 40-plus inch vert. The broad was good too. And he's coming off the torn pec. Those were the only 3 drills that he did. He showcased speed and explosiveness. And he's a little light, but he's already a really good run defender. So it's I'd be careful saying this, but it's shades of Micah Parsons where he just gets to a spot, shoots gaps, and makes plays that way. And also, he's such a twitchy athlete that he'll chase down a ball carrier from behind. He can just do it in a variety of ways. And then it just comes down to, man, can we teach this guy how to be a pass rusher? Can we refine his game there? Can we add a couple moves? And then this guy becomes really, really scary. And I'm looking at Chicago and, who is that guy long-term on the edge? Like, who is that cornerstone pass rusher that you know is going to be the guy when you face Chicago? Oh, wait. Yeah, so I definitely think it's a worthy area to address, and a big-time riser after the combine to move from 1 back to 12 and still get a guy that could be the piece you build your defense around. I think it's really solid value, plus all the additional assets you got from Houston. Next, the New York Jets at pick 13. Another non-surprise here, Peter Skoronski. Makes a lot of sense. Offensive line is going to be a bit of a question mark. We don't know what's going to happen with guys like George Fant, Dwayne Brown, Mekhi Becton even. And we don't even know if the Jets are going to have this pick, because who knows what this Aaron Rodgers deal looks like, if he does go to New York, of course. But if they do stick and pick and get to select here at 13, tackle's just the most logical way to go. And I know Skoronski can kick inside and play guard, and the arm length wasn't great, but I'm just trusting his tape, and he just looked as polished as a pass protector as anybody in this class. Multi-year starter, perfect, seamless transition at Northwestern, replacing Rashawn Slater, who was a force to be reckoned with as well. So, yeah, I like this pick a ton. And maybe if you believe in Elijah Vera Tucker that much, that he could potentially move to tackle, that gives you that much more security with Peter Skoronski here. Otherwise, yeah, maybe this does become Broderick Jones, who is going to be the next pick here to the New England Patriots. So either way, whatever order you want to put these tackles in at 13, 14, I think it could bear out that way. But offensive line's definitely a big need for the Patriots. Thought about wide receiver, but I've done that in a handful of mocks, and I just kind of want to play out with different scenarios. Really interested throughout the course of this weekend what Patriots fans have to say about how I use their picks this weekend. But Broderick Jones, trying to find that bookend, future franchise left tackle. I think they do cut Trent Brown. That could be a guy they bring back. And ideally, then if they do that, he's moving back to right tackle. So I think left tackle, if one of the top 3 is still on the board, you go ahead and let it fly here at 14. Also, another guy that looked pretty good at the combine. Again, all of the tackles showcased pretty well at Indy. Next, we get Myles Murphy going to the Green Bay Packers. I'd love to see this be Lucas Van Ness or Nolan Smith, but they're both off the board. So Myles Murphy just kind of the next guy up. Bit of a project when it comes to defensive line. Doesn't have really any moves on tape yet, but 6'5", just under 270 pounds. That's your mobile ball of clay. And he's already a pretty good run defender as well. And I could see, with how Green Bay worked their magic with Rashawn Gary, and we started to see some impact from Devontae Wyatt. They just kind of have that ability to develop these guys and get pretty quick impacts. Devontae Wyatt was 24. You expected that NFL readiness. Rashawn Gary truly was a project. And, by the back half of year 2, he was a pretty big contributor for them. So I'd love to see if they could do that same thing here with Myles Murphy. He could play inside, he could play outside. So I think this allows you to continue to use Rashawn Gary. And then, I'd like to see the move on from Preston Smith long term. But if you really believe in Kingsley Enagbare, who I thought should have been a day 2 pick last year, ultimately goes like round 5 and falls into Green Bay's lap, I think that's a rotation that could ultimately work out, because I'm still a big believer in Enagbare. So I like the versatility you get here with Murphy. Going to be able to be a guy that you get on the field one way or another, inside or out. And of course, that size and that athleticism, that's really the reason you would make this pick top half of the first round. Next, Washington at pick 16. They're going to go ahead and snipe the Steelers away from Joey Porter Jr., and then the Steelers are going to take Devon Witherspoon. So I'll kind of go 2 for 1 here. I basically had the corners play out as how I currently have them ranked. I go back and forth with Porter Jr. and Witherspoon, but nevertheless, Gonzalez, Porter Jr., Witherspoon, I think is how I have my top 3 right now, and they're all really, really good. Then you get a small step down for the next corner, who is going to come off the board here in just a couple of picks, but nonetheless, I think Joey Porter Jr. is a fantastic fit for Jack Del Rio in that defense. He can go get guys at the line of scrimmage. 34-inch arms at 6'2.5". Good luck beating that press coverage. Because of that, he also kind of fits that cover 2, press a guy, and then sit in the flat and just kind of squat in that zone. That could work out. But I also think, 4.45 speed showcases enough athleticism, and because of those long arms, and I cover 3 heavy defense and a quarters heavy defense where you're playing a lane, that makes sense too. So long story short, man, zone, whatever you're planning on here, I think it makes a ton of sense for what Washington's trying to run. And then when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers and Devon Witherspoon, they're just looking for whoever's going to be that top name in that cornerback room long term. So if Witherspoon's the 3rd guy come off the board, then so be it. Maybe a little bit smaller than those other 2, sub 6 foot, right around that 180-pound mark. But his tape is probably the most NFL ready of any guy. Allowed 1 yard in press coverage last year. So, And I'm curious to see what the athletic numbers come in at his pro day. But nonetheless, I think whatever Pittsburgh wants to do, he becomes a fit in it. And at this point, you just got to trust the tape. And, I could also see like his willingness to tackle being something that kind of fits in with what Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin are wanting to have in a cornerback. So I kind of think that he fits their culture and what they're kind of looking for and willingness from a cornerback. Next up, the Detroit Lions at pick 18. I'll have this be Kalijah Kancey, another huge winner from the combine. 4.67, top defensive tackle time of all time. In the 40, that is. And if you're going to be small, if you're going to be 6 foot, if you're going to be 280 pounds, you better be a twitched up athlete, and that he was. I also think he has decent arm length given his size too. So I think having this guy as that 3-4 DN, just a single gap pass rush specialist, slot him in between Aiden Hutchinson and Aleem McNeil, or, for that matter, James Houston and Aleem McNeil. I think this is a huge big time pass rush bolster to that defense. We went corner at 6, we went D-line, get that extra guy in the mix there, and you could even rotate him out on the edge too, depending on what you want that rotation to look like. But yeah, I think he's gonna put himself in a position that once you get to 18, you start thinking about where Kalijah Kancey's coming off the board. And I think 18 to 29, once you get to New Orleans, that's kind of his sweet spot, his window right now. And I think he's probably going to go in the top half of that. So love this first round haul here for the Lions. Let's move on to Tampa Bay. And as promised, we're going to go corner here. I've gone Bijan the last couple of mock drafts, and I do apologize, Buccaneers fans. Today, we're going to go with a position of a higher position value. We're going to go corner. We're going to go Deonte Banks. One of the few guys that just didn't all of a sudden shrink at the combine, right? 6'2", right around that 200-pound mark, 4'3", 540. You see the potential of him as a man coverage corner, but I also think with how good of an athlete it is, and he moves pretty fluid for that, I think there's some potential to tap into him as a zone-heavy guy too. So, I would just love to see Todd Bowles get this type of corner, high-end athlete, has the size, and I think scheme flexibility. This is a guy I think Todd Bowles could fall in love with. And considering Jamel Dean may well be gone, if not him, then certainly Sean Murphy-Bunting I think is out, if not both of them, right? Like you could potentially be down 2 of your top 3 corners, so definitely think it's an area of need, and I'd prefer them to go corner versus running back at 19. Let's move on now. Seattle at pick 20. First wide receiver coming off the board is going to be Jackson Smith-Njigba. And if you've been around the channel for a while, not necessarily the biggest JSN guy, but nevertheless, he is the perfect slot wide receiver, and it's exactly what Seattle's kind of missing right now. And if you were to throw him in the mix with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, you just paid Geno Smith. Why not give him all the toys to play with, right? Like, go ahead, send him out to the backyard and give him everything possible at his disposal. And also, I think long-term, when Tyler Lockett does eventually be moved on from, and he's not a Seahawk, I think you could have a 1-2 wide receiver tandem of Metcalf as this field stretcher who has a killer slant that plays off of it, and then Jackson Smith-Njigba as this volume-heavy slot guy, because the 3-cone was great, 6'5", if I'm remembering that right. If not that, it was like a 6'5", which is even crazier. And yeah, he didn't run the 40, but he showcased a lot of short area explosiveness, and that signals to me that this guy is just naturally going to get open. And especially from the slot, I'm more interested in that short area ability to work versus that long speed. It'd be great to have it, but that short area quickness, that explosiveness, that burst out of a break, that's what I'm focused on. And Jackson Smith-Njigba showcased that at Indy. So if I had to rethink some of my wide receiver rankings, and I'm also going to wait till USC's Pro Day to get my finalized wide receiver rankings out there, because he may even jump Addison depending on what that true 40 looks like. And if Addison runs again, maybe the back strains, continue to linger around. But Jackson Smith-Njigba going to Seattle, I haven't gone really offensive heavy, and when I have for Seattle here at 20, it's been offensive line. So a little bit different here, but I'd be curious to hear if you're a Seahawks fan, are you down with JSN at 20? He'd also be a really good fit here for the Chargers at 21, assuming they do move on from Keenan Allen. But we're going to have a pretty hefty run at wide receivers. I'm going to have Zay Flowers be the second guy off the board. Hey, speed talks, this could certainly be Quentin Johnston, and you could flip it around. Quentin Johnston's the next pick. So if you think Johnston is going to go before Flowers, okay, then just flip these two. It doesn't really matter. They both bring a lot of the same stuff that I'm looking for. And actually, they just do it in different body types. They're both awesome satellite weapons. Get the ball to them out in space and let them be hard to bring down, because Flowers is twitchy and Johnson is slippery. And then deep down the field, yeah, Johnson does it at 6'4", 208 pounds and has a great ability to go up, find the football. And that's the biggest thing is, like, John Ross was fast and he had decent size, but balls in the air, he could not locate it. He could not go up and win it. Quentin Johnston can do both those things. That's why I'm kind of head scratching at why people don't really like Quentin Johnston, but nevertheless, my opinion, and it's only mine. And then for Zay Flowers, not quite the same, because he is, sub 6 foot, sub 5'10" for that matter, but he's so electric and quick out of breaks, and he's a great deep route running savant. So they're doing it in a little bit of different ways, but both the Chargers and the Ravens stand to benefit from a guy like that. For the Chargers, it's like, hey, you get to add a guy who's a slippery yards after the catch guy, keep the game simple for Justin Herbert. And also, if he continues to be this kind of more conservative guy that doesn't like to push blood on the field, getting a Quentin Johnson or Zay Flowers to do that underneath stuff and be a yak weapon comes in handy. Or ideally, these two speed guys could try to, ag on Herbert and have him utilize that arm strength, flip the field more. Let's take some shots. Let's push the ball deep down the field. And then for Baltimore, we'll see what happens with Lamar Jackson. Ultimately, if you were to ask me right here, right now, I think this was a move for Baltimore to have Lamar Jackson negotiate with other teams, come to terms, and then the Ravens are going to match it and say, thanks for doing the negotiating legwork for us because we couldn't figure it out. That, and it's a bit of an I told you so. It's like only one team I think was going to give Deshaun Watson a fully guaranteed contract, and it was Cleveland. And a lot of owners were upset by that, including the Baltimore Ravens owner, whose name is now escaping me, but he came out and said, what the hell? You're kind of leaving us, you're giving us the short end of the stick here. And I think, Lamar is going to be hard to find a fully guaranteed deal. Maybe Washington, I could see that. Maybe Atlanta's kind of playing it aloof right now. But odds are it's probably not going to be a fully guaranteed contract, and anything less than that, I think the Ravens are going to match. So I am still planning on Lamar Jackson being there. So whether it's Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnson, you need another wide receiver in the mix. Pair up with Rashad Bateman and to work with Mark Ingram at that tight end position. Bijan Robinson was kind of tempting here, but I'm focused on the outside. Need to add another wide receiver into Baltimore's offense. Next up, Minnesota at pick 23. And here we go, 4 straight wide receivers. Now, granted, maybe not the most realistic thing, but that's kind of the sweet spot for this wide receiver class. I don't think... Garrett Wilson went 10 last year. Drake London went 8. I don't think there's a guy worthy of that this year. But you're talking, 20 to 23. Yeah, that's kind of the sweet spot for these guys. That's a perfect window to take them. And all 4 of these teams, I think, really could use a wide receiver too. And they're all look at these 4 teams. Minnesota trying to get over the hump. Baltimore trying to get over the hump. The Chargers trying to get over the hump. And Seattle made the playoffs last year. And if you add Jackson Smith-Njigba, that kind of takes them from 7 seed to maybe someone who could flirt with the division title or maybe be a higher ranked wild card spot. But for Minnesota, I think Adam Thielen probably going to have to be a cut casualty. He's just lost too much of a step. You could move him full-time to the slot with a pick like Addison, but I think you stand to benefit from 2 different things here. One, Addison, even with the 4.49, let's just say that's his true 40, he's a great separator and a guy who can win intermediate and deep down the field. So just having someone else who can reliably get open, because Thielen just is not as trustworthy, as he once was, go back, 6 years ago. Adding a guy like that can get open takes a lot of pressure off Justin Jefferson. Going back to the wild card game, the entire city of New York had shadow coverage over Justin Jefferson. They were not going to let him get open. So Minnesota needs to find that alternative option. But also, because Addison is a good deep route runner, you can do this with KJ Osborne too, but Justin Jefferson's already the best intermediate route runner in the game right now and the most lethal guy in that 10 to 20 yard range. His ability to go from 0 to 100 is impressive, but his ability to go from 100 to 0 is jaw-dropping. And I think adding Addison to the mix or asking KJ Osborne to run more of those just clear out routes, especially if it's Osborne, right? Because let's let Addison get open, but utilize KJ Osborne with good speed as just a clear out guy and make it that much harder to stop Justin Jefferson in the intermediate parts of the field. That's when I think this offense gets fully OP, and that's when maybe Kirk Cousins can be enough as long as he's making those throws and stays healthy, and the offensive line's not putting too much pressure in his face. So love the idea of them adding wide receiver, and with Addison being a bit of a faller, I could see him being potentially the 4th wide receiver off the board. Okay, next up we get to the Jags at pick 24. I'm going to go Antonio Johnson. Yeah, I know a lot of people are talking about, they like Keely Ringo and they could use an outside corner. I think Darius Williams is going to be that outside guy next year. I'm looking to add that nickel corner, strong safety type. That's exactly what Antonio Johnson is. In a perfect world, this would be Brian Branch. But if you have to settle for Antonio Johnson, my number 2 safety in this class, then that's not too shabby. And plus, he adds a lot of size to 6'3", or 6'2", I think was his official height at the combine. Still not too terrible from what he was listed at A&M. And then right around 200 pounds. It may not be a guy where I think Brian Branch could be, he's instinctive enough. And I think, again, he runs faster and plays faster than 4.5. He could be a free safety. Antonio Johnson, I don't think quite does that. But box safety, nickel corner role, I think that kind of rounds out that secondary, gives you a really solid place to start with. And plus, boosting that coverage unit is going to make that pass rush that much scarier going into another year of Josh Allen headlining that, year 2 of Travon Walker. Also, hopefully they get back Arden Key. That would be big time because he was a really nice rotational piece last year. So love to see them kind of finish off that coverage unit, get it to a really healthy spot, and then hopefully that boosts the pass rush off of it, and then we'll kind of address the rest of their needs tomorrow and Sunday. Then we get to the Giants at pick 25. A little different here, and I feel like Giants fans are going to hate me, but I'm going to go Michael Mayer. Look, so you give out the big contract to Daniel Jones, you tag Saquon Barkley, so I'm not looking at either of those 2 position groups. And real quick, the Daniel Jones, with $80 million guaranteed, it's kind of just a 2-year contract, so interesting there. So it's a pseudo long-term agreement, but I don't love Daniel Jones making like $40 million a year, but the Giants had to make a decision. Kind of felt like they got backed into a corner, and Jones kind of owned that negotiating process. So that's a little unfortunate, but we'll see how it plays out, right? Like, young guy coming off his best season, who knows what the future has in store. Adding Michael Mayer, I mean, to me, a clear upgrade over Daniel Bellinger, and with the top 4 wide receivers off the board. Where can we find that pass-catching upgrade? I think it's with Michael Mayer. 4.7, I know that's not great, but it's the same time TJ Hawkinson ran, and we're talking about him being one of the better tight ends in football and looking pretty good once he got to Minnesota. So I'm going to trust Brian Table. I'm going to trust Mike Kafka to utilize Michael Mayer, and Notre Dame used him in a lot of different ways, out wide, in the slot, in line. So hopefully the Giants can do something similar, get an upgrade somewhere there in the pass-catching core. Wish it could have been wide receiver, but ultimately it's going to be tight end. And then tomorrow we're going to address wide receiver. Okay. Next up at 26, I'm on the Dallas Cowboys. Finally get to make this happen in a mock. Bijan Robinson, not only the replacement of Zeke Elliott, but a clear-cut upgrade over what Zeke Elliott is right now. Yes, they tagged Tony Pollard, but that could also just give you a year of having Robinson and Pollard, and then maybe Pollard's going to hit the open market and you're going to let him walk, or you do work out that long-term extension. I almost kind of just want to see Tony Pollard be the lead back somewhere, but it is what it is. Nevertheless, Bijan Robinson trying to find that long-term guy in the backfield. Yes, I don't love running backs in the first round, but given what you get as a receiver with Bijan Robinson, I don't hate it as much. And considering Najee Harris, I think, went 22, to get Bijan 4 picks after that, I think it's actually pretty solid value. To me, he's kind of the perfect running back prospect for where the game is at in 2023. So, yes, there are other needs that Dallas could go, but you know what? Hot take. I'd rather see them go Bijan than tight end here. If I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, give me Bijan Robinson versus like Dalton Kincaid in this spot. That's just my take, though. Anyways, we get to the Buffalo Bills. Osiris Torrance, this is a layup if I've ever saw one. Anytime I get a Torrance fall into the Bills, it's automatic. He's just what Ryder Saffold was supposed to be. This mean mauler, make an impact in the run game, make the life of James Cook easier, keep Josh Allen upright. And Osiris Torrance, that jump from Louisiana Lafayette to Florida, and specifically as a pass protector, seeing him be able to handle that jump in competition makes me feel pretty confident that even with a jump to the NFL level, he'll at least be, average, on par as a pass protector while giving you a lot in the run game, which this is something that, when you're paying Josh Allen a lot of money, if you can find a way to utilize those running backs some more, have them take hits that's not going to Josh Allen's body, probably a good thing. So love this fit. Addresses a huge need for the Bills. The Bengals are the next team up on the clock, but finish it off. You go back to that Bills-Bengals playoff game. So much talk about the Bengals offensive line, but the Bills O-line was by far the weaker unit in that game. So we got to address it here at 27 if we can. And then we get to Cincinnati at 28. We're going to also go offensive line. We're going to go Darnell Wright. Heard a lot of Bengals fans who want to see Darnell Wright be the pick here, and he is your Lyle Collins kind of contingency. Health's a question mark. His play's a question mark. So go ahead and address it with a guy like Darnell Wright, who since flipping over to right tackle from previously playing on the left side, got really, really good. I also think that kind of coincides with some protection from the Josh Heupel offense. But nevertheless, good size, good strength, fluid mover too. So kind of the perfect tackle here for late round one. He's not as twitchy and as special as Paris Johnson, but man, he does a lot of those same stuff, just maybe a half step to a full step down from those other guys. So really love the value here at 28, addressing a big time area need for Cincy. And then at 29, this is where I'm gonna have Brian Brzez's slide come to an end. I really do wish I could have gotten him onto a team earlier than this. But, you play the board, and I'm not upset with any other picks that I made. So getting this type of, this could be a great David Onyemata replacement because you're getting the 6'5", 300-pound-ish defensive tackle that gives you solid run protection or run defense pretty much right away, with a little bit of upside when it comes to him being a pass rusher because really just doesn't have any moves. We just don't know what he is long-term as a pass rusher. So I think 29 is a great spot to take a chance on him. And plus, the Saints love these, insane athletes, freaky builds, and Brian Brzee is definitely that. So bit of a project, but it's kind of the Saints type at the same time, and addressing a need there on the interior defensive line, which if David Onyemata works, then they're going to be hurting bad there at that spot of the roster. 2 more picks to go. Philadelphia Eagles taking my boy Julius Brents. I'm going to scroll down. That's unfortunate, but Julius Brents is an absolute alien. 6'3", 34-inch arms, 4'5", which is plenty fast when you're that big, and a 6'6", 3-3 cone. Oh my gosh. So we'll have to wait and see what Philadelphia's defense, kind of plays out. If it's going to be more man heavy, it's going to be more like, with Jonathan Gannon, a lot of quarters in the mix, but they also ran a decent amount of cover 1 and stuff like that. So enough flexibility there as is. But man, if Philadelphia does anything close to zone heavy, like the NFL as a whole is like 2-to-1 essentially zone to man. So Julius Brents is just, as long as he gets to a team that kind of does the same thing, he's going to be a freak. I do think there's man coverage ability. He's this guy that went from Iowa that is very, very zone dominant to K-State, where it's a mix of both man and zone. So he graded out really well there, both using PFF's grades throughout his college career. But even when you put the eyeballs on him, yeah, he looks like it. And At 6'3", good athleticism, not 4.2 speed, but the 3-cone and a 4.5 is still solid. The 3-cone's electric. The 40's solid. I think teams are going to look at this and be like, it's not quite Tariq Woolen, but if I get the chance to draft another 6'3 corner, we saw how it worked with Seattle and Woolen, so I'm going to take a chance on him. I think he's going to go late 1, if not then really early round 2, just because, again, this guy's extraterrestrial. This guy is not from Earth. So I would love to see the Eagles draft this guy. And, man, if you can make it work with 6'3", and then, that 3-cone, 6.63, that's insane. If they can make it work, this guy's going to be a very, very special piece to that defense long term. And it's an area need considering James Bradbury may be gone this free agency period. And then to round us out, I'm going to have Will McDonald going to Kansas City. Yeah, they just got to continue to address edge. Frank Clark's gone, and even if they had him around, I was hoping he would just be a DPR and nothing more. But Will McDonald, to me, makes an absolute ton of sense. Good pairing with George Karlaftis, speed on one end, power and violent hands on the other. So it feels like it rounds out that pass rush unit. Could still stand to add one more guy, maybe in free agency, maybe like in Melvin Ingram, get him back in Kansas City, just to get that third guy into the mix. Maybe it is eventually working something out with Frank Clark. But that is going to do it for the round 1 portion of my updated 2023 NFL mock draft. Scrolled across the top so you can see all the picks one more time. But be sure to leave me your thoughts down below in the comment section. Who's your favorite team? Did you like the round 1 pick? Did you hate it? No matter whether you loved it, hate it, somewhere there in the middle on it, I'd love to hear your explanation and your rationale for why you felt that way about your pick. I read every comment, so be sure to leave your thoughts down below. Like if you guys enjoyed, subscribe if you are new, and be sure to come back tomorrow when we have round 2 of this updated 2023 mock. But until then, my name is Teej, and I'm signing off.